Welcome back to the Puckn Pod. On today's episode, we discuss the Leafs and Canucks and the game they just recently played. We also discuss NHL trade rumors. Then we talk about the Toronto Raptors tanking season. And finally, we talk about our favorite Judd Apatow movies. That's coming up next right here on the Puckn Pod. Let's Puckn go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is another episode of the Puckn Pod. My name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
I'm Paul.
It's going to be another fun one, gentlemen. We've got lots to talk about. And more specifically, our two teams that we cheer for. I say cheered past tense because...
It is past tense, man.
Yeah,
That's
because
it, I'm done.
We cheered and then we both decided... I decided this after the game. When they played the next team after the Leafs, but I decided I'm done cheering for the Canucks, dude. Oh my goodness, what a season it has been! It's been like so up and down. I think for both teams, it's been so up and down, and there's been so many times where we've looked at our teams and thought this is a promising look, and then all of a sudden they play another team the next game, and it's just like they're falling off the cliff again.
One of our regular followers, I'll mention his name because I know he won't mind and he'll probably laugh at this, guy that I used to work with, Mike Fulla. He watches and listens to our episodes all the time. I bet you he's rolling his eyes right now because, yes, the Leafs are in first place in the Atlantic. However, this is trending in the very wrong direction.
And it's when they decide to forget how to play defensive hockey, which is crazy to think about considering they have, both teams, the Vancouver Canucks and the Toronto Maple Leafs have Rick Tocchet and Craig Berube as head coaches. These are defensive-minded coaches.
Having said that, though, I don't think that the Leafs' defensive game is my issue with them. It's really not. Their defensive game is what's leading to their lack of scoring.
Right.
To be honest with you. And what's causing the other teams to beat them is themselves. Yeah. Not their defensive game. It's their turnovers. It's their sloppy play. It's the I don't give a crap kind of attitude. It's not. I would completely say and stand behind this for the first time in years that I'm happy with their defensive play.
Yeah,
for the most part.
It's a fair point. That's a fair point. And I think back to specifically this game where the Leafs and the Canucks played together, where I didn't really feel like Toronto was giving up too many high danger chances where it felt like obvious, but at the same time, I just felt like the scoring wasn't there, obviously. In the end, you can tell, Paul, you can tell us, overall what the final score was. But I mean, in the end, we're talking about a matter of one team winning and one team losing, but in a lopsided manner, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, I would probably quote Steve Dangle off of the LFR podcast on
Let's never
on
quote Steve Dangle, just for the record. I feel like we don't want to quote that guy and give him too much praise.
Paraphrase it then.
I do, for copyright's sake, I do have to mention him.
Oh, okay.
So
does he pay the bills? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to quote him and say that they bumble the puck around the ice the entire game, the Leafs. For the Vancouver Canucks, basically coming off a flight, an hour or two before the game, and the Leafs being well rested, being well prepared, and literally chasing the puck around the entire rink. There's a couple of decent chances at points, but it was one of those games where it was lopsided in the fact that the Canucks seemed to be ready to go, and the Leafs did not.
Capitalizing when they should be capitalizing, and the Leafs not doing that, which I was surprised about. I'll be honest. The top scorer is not really obviously scoring, but really making it scary for us Canuck fans.
So from the defensive side, to touch on that point again, that game had 20-18 were the shots on net.
Yeah.
That's pretty low event, really.
It's an average game for the Canucks this season.
It seems to be that way for Toronto, too.
Yeah.
Like I said, because they've been focusing on defense, their scoring has faded a bit.
Yeah.
The absence of Austin Matthews for weeks on and off has been an issue. Things like that. There's lots of factors. The Leafs have had some pretty significant injuries at forward, and they've been injured pretty much the whole year, I would say, in some capacity. So it's hard to really analyze it fully. But just it's becoming a trend with Toronto. Like they used to 30, 35 shots a game for years. And now it's 20 to 25 maybe.
I do think that is a common kind of symptom of defensive-minded hockey, because typically you're waiting for the other team to make a mistake, and that's typically why you're seeing less and less shots. And I noticed that last year when Canucks, the Canucks played a defensive style over an offensive style, and it helped the team in that you're letting in less goals, but your offensive-minded players should be scoring in that specific scenario too. And obviously that's not what happened there.
I have a couple of objective questions I want to ask you guys. Paul, I'll start with you. What did you think of Dennis Hildeby's game against the Canucks?
Well, we haven't even talked about the score yet, so it was a 3-0 game for the Vancouver Canucks. You let a goal in the first 30 seconds of the game from far out. I kind of screamed at this in our chat that we have, that Hildeby, right from the start of this game and maybe the last two games that he's played, is screaming Samsonov 2.0 to me right now in terms of the soft, long shots going in the net. I know it was a tip by Besser, but even then he wasn't heavily screened. And for being, over... 6'5"
He's 6'7".
6'7".
I would argue he wasn't screened at all, because it was like they were trying to set up and they were just putting a shot
exactly.
on net,
and like for the size that he is, like I can't see why he wouldn't have been able to get part of his body on that. That was a bit of a momentum killer, at least for the Leafs side. For them, obviously, it was a momentum booster for the Canucks. Hildeby, I believe he's going to be an NHL quality goaltender maybe in the long term. The guy's still got some work to do.
I think it's up in his head.
Yeah.
I think that's between the ears needs the most work with him. There's no doubt that he has the skill and the ability. He's talked about in trade rumors constantly. Everybody, wants a shot at him because of the Leafs. The Leafs generally do have good goaltending depth in their system, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's basically at the top of their list. So there are people that are calling about him.
I believe it.
But yeah, it's not materializing. We all know that goaltenders usually take longer to develop anyway.
They do.
So, I'm not overly worried, but the problem with that is that he's their next best option right now, and it's not there, right? And we all know the risk of playing Joseph Woll more than needed because of his injury issues as well. Yeah. So it's really kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario, right?
I will kind of admit this, looking from the outside in on the Leafs, and that it feels a lot similar to what last year was for Vancouver, only for the fact that they overplayed Demko last year, which caused him to get injured in the playoffs. It was literally It was the first game of the playoffs last year. He got hurt, won the game, and then we never saw him again. And then finally came back this year because of being overplayed throughout the season. So it's definitely a dangerous kind of mentality to go into the season with, and that you're gonna rely on one goaltender, but you do need that backup goaltender to bring it. And so he's got to be better.
Well, there was the worry for Joseph Woll. There was 2 days rest in between the games. Woll could have gone into that game, really. Yeah. There's 2 days rest, but there's the worry with his longevity, too, because he does get injured so easily.
How old is he?
I believe Woll's
26, I think.
Oh, okay, so he's still a young guy. He's not 40.
He's still basically considered a prospect, right?
Yeah.
In a roundabout way,
for sure.
But that's why they brought in Stolars, was to kind of solidify that. And then since Stolars has been hurt, Woll's been playing fairly well. Mm-hmm. He still has his moments, but again,
he has his moments.
Yeah. Okay. Now I've got a bit of a loaded question for you.
Okay.
It's kind of a three-parter almost. So, from your perspective, in that game, was Toronto just bad? Did Vancouver just completely capitalize on the situation? Did Vancouver carry that game? And what did you think about Lankinen?
So, okay, I'll start with Lankinen. I thought Lankinen was incredible. He made what I call, and I mentioned this in the chat group, I was like, that is I'm trying to remember what the wording I used. I think I said Vesna or something, it was a joke, but he made it a few stellar saves in that game that were probably game saving. But But, in terms of the Canucks carrying the game, I don't think they carried the game. I thought, based on the shots alone, it was fairly even. The only difference between the two was that Vancouver capitalized and Toronto didn't. There was a few chances. Like, there was a breakaway by Tavares that I thought he could have easily, I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was 1-1 or 1-0. I mean, at that point, he could have easily tied the game and turned the whole thing around. He didn't put the puck where he should have put the puck. Lankinen made the save, and then the play goes on. So I just feel like, ultimately, I don't think that the Canucks carried the game. I thought it was fairly even keel.
Right.
Like I said, I just think that Vancouver capitalized when Toronto didn't.
Chris Tanev, ex-Canuck, to paraphrase him, basically, I'll make a couple of points here. The first, he said that Vancouver outworked them and outcompeted. So the thing about that irks me, two things. That's Vancouver Canuck hockey.
Yeah.
But that's also Toronto Maple Leaf hockey now.
Yeah.
Right? And it didn't happen. And it hasn't been happening lately. And this is the trend that's concerning for Toronto fans. And that's a prime example. Tanev saying that and watching the game and realizing that, right? And
I can see what he means, and and it's a similar problem on the Vancouver side this year specifically, where losing puck battles, like, that's number one, right? You're in the boards and you're fighting for the puck, and the other team walks away with the puck. Then to me, that's what he means by that, right? And I would agree with that. I think that there were a few moments where probably they could have. They might have wanted that one back, in that specific scenario. But, I think that's a common problem with the Canucks this year, too. It's just sometimes you get a good game, and unfortunately, that's the thing that's scary when you think about the rest of the season, especially at this point. As we record this, Vancouver hasn't done anything to improve their team yet. There's been no trades. There's been no, not even any hints of anything where if you have something to look forward to. And so that's the thing that kind of worries me is, like, really, are they trying to bomb this season? Because I think right now we're maybe sitting on wild card number 2. But Calgary's right behind us, so it's a scary thought.
It's funny you say that Vancouver hasn't done anything yet to improve or make adjustments, so to speak. Yet there's a lot of people suggesting that the entire league is on hold to see what Vancouver does with the rumored players that could be involved potentially.
And that's really what I mean. It's like, okay, if these rumors are true, I read today, for example, that's the whole thing with JT Miller, with him leaving the team when he left the team for that personal, whatever the personal thing was. There's a rumor that it was the team that asked him to leave so they can investigate whatever this problem is that the players have with him. Because the rumor is now that it's not just Pettersson that has a problem with him. There's other players that have a problem with him. So, and I hate that kind of speculation because, like, obviously it's negative attention to your team. Like, every team has problems with players and stuff like that. But if there's a thing where there's multiple players who are having issues with the guy, then maybe that's the whole thing. And maybe he's not being productive because he doesn't feel like he's worth anything. Like, maybe it's mental for him too, where he's just like, what's the point anymore? And that makes me sad because he's a really good player and he's a valuable player for any team. There's a reason why all these teams are interested if Vancouver is, going to trade him. But it just feels like, as a fan, it just feels frustrating because it's like you just want to get through a season where there's not so much negative attention on your team. And last year was a good example of that.
Yeah, you're talking about negative attention, obviously, to a team. There is, with the way that Toronto's been playing their games lately, and their last 3 games, they're playing tonight as well, but the last 3 games they've lost by 3 goals every one of those games. And the attention's gone from, hey, we love that you guys had a 5-game winning streak, to what the are you guys doing?
Yeah.
It's completely gone off the rails. I'm all for a dump and chase game. To a certain extent,
if you're going to win the battle,
yeah, you have to win the battle, and you still have to use hockey sense. You have to use your hockey smarts too. All they do right now is cycle and dump and chase, and unfortunately, when the guy's dumping in, there isn't even 2 players in the zone yet to get down there to go after the puck.
So you're basically giving up the puck.
You're giving up the puck almost every time, and the forecheck's hard. I see them going in their sticks and poke checking it free and stuff like that, and they do create chances off those turnovers, but you can't play hockey based upon turnovers. You do have to control the game. Like I said, dump and chase is one aspect, but there's got to be more.
Yeah.
It helps you control the pace of the game if you do hold on to the puck and you manage it efficiently. Use your brain. Don't just throw it in there and hope one of the players gets there in time.
I believe that's what Brian Burke meant when he said the word truculence.
Yes.
That's exactly what he's talking about. He wants people who will be persistent on going after that puck. If you're going to dump the puck in, go after it. If your team is changing and you're the only guy there and you're going to dump the puck in, don't go change right after you dump the puck in. Go after that puck, and then once your teammates are on the ice, then you can change.
I can quote Craig Berube from that game, and he said on the team's performance, he said, I didn't think we played with enough pace in the game. Obviously, we didn't generate enough. We have to generate more than we did, power play included, of course. We had 3 power plays, right? We didn't get anything going on our power play, which could have given us momentum in the game. We have to move the puck. We didn't move the puck well enough tonight. I didn't think we were connected well enough on our breakouts or in the neutral zone. It was just slow.
Yeah.
I think that quote has been copied and pasted 8 times out of the last 15 games, whether they're winning or losing. Yeah. So then whose fault is it, or where does this issue lie now, and whose responsibility is it to fix this crap? Because it's been getting more and more monotonous and consistent, and I'm getting real tired of it, right? Like, it's the one thing that the Leafs aren't is slow, at least not at forward.
No.
I would say their back end is a little on the tardy side. Maybe one too many tacos the night before kind of thing. But at forward, they are speedy as hell, and there is no reason why they can't win more puck battles, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny how I look at, that statement alone. To me, it mirrors exactly what Vancouver's going through. It's the same thing, and that same structure of, like, dump and chase, it's the same thing. I'm yelling at my TV all the time, take it to the net, you guys. Like,
yes.
Enough of this try to get a point shot through. Like, it only works so many times, and then you can't get one through. Take it to the net once in a while. Make the goalie try to move to make a save, and like open up a little bit so that you can score. Because it's just so funny. Like, I mean, obviously it's easy for us to say we're not playing the game, but like I feel like that mentality is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Where I think about the playoffs last year in that game against Nashville where Brock Besser, they're down a goal with seconds to go in the game. Brock Besser comes in, takes it to the net, and scores with like 0.9 seconds left or something in the game to tie the game up, and then they end up winning in overtime. Just like that kind of thing, like you need to have that kind of hockey sense, and it feels like that's missing this season.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
I want to talk about power play just for a sec, Paul, specifically with you, because I know we will both watch the games. So as you're talking about taking it to the net, it kind of reminded me of something that I was thinking about earlier today, and the fact that watching the Leafs on the power play, we know that they've struggled all year long, and it's baffling as to how it is. A complete enigma with the talent that they have. Mm-hmm. And something I'm noticing specifically, and I've noticed it a lot more lately, is that they are not playing with a feeling. They're not playing with instinct. Because they're struggling, it seems that they are solely relying on structure. And what I mean by that is I watched the game against Dallas the other night where there was at least 4 times on one power play where the puck carrier coming through the neutral zone, they do the whole drop through the neutral zone thing, like, whatever. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm going to move on from that.
Same
right
thing.
Now.
Every team seems to be doing it.
I know. I don't understand it. So that puck carrier, after they pick up the drop pass, is now coming through the neutral zone, weaving, finding an area, and rather than have, you can see that the defense is split. They can only have 3 forwards at that blue line. There has to be someone back. That's one single person. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you split that, and you've got an avenue to at least work through with the puck. Yet they are dropping it off to the wing every time, whether it be the right or the left side. There is no need to do that. Carry the puck through. You've got 18 feet, dude.
Yeah.
And then turn around, do a button hook, and look for a play. But why are you structurally following that situation and passing it off to your wing every time? It's scouted, for Christ's sake. Like, everybody knows that's what's going to happen. Change it.
And you can tell that it's definitely a set play that they've worked on over and over and over again. And it's the problem with that is that, like you say, it's scouted by all these other teams, so they know how to defend it. And And it's infuriating. And I know exactly, again, everything you say is something I've said about my team too. It's so funny, but it's true. Like, it's so frustrating that drop pass is like, okay, guys, like, try something else, Every once in a while, Quinn Hughes will carry the puck in instead of doing the drop pass, and I love it. It gets me excited every time because it's something different, But, same thing, that little bumper, or not bumper, the half wall pass, or pass. It's a pass to the half wall, and then they try to set up from that point, but then the other team defends it and takes the puck away.
And if that entry isn't crisp, and even that half wall pass, if it gets fumbled at all, you're done.
Yeah.
There goes 30 seconds off your power play. See you later.
It's a big waste, yeah.
Just, throw it right back into their zone. Like it's, you're just talking about like instinct. Like it's one thing to play structure, but the structure can't be everything. Like, you pay these guys the millions of dollars that you do based upon their skill. The structure helps them to play better as a team, but use the gifts that you've got. Use your brain, use your head. There's way too much throwing the puck around and making a fancy doodle pass instead of getting it to the net.
Yeah,
getting it to the net.
How many times on a 5-on-3 do you see them just pass?
All they look for
and you're
is
just
the
like,
pass.
come on, guys, put it on the net, make the goalie
and
move.
the fancy play all the time. Like even I'm not going to give anything away in the game tonight. The only thing that I saw was there was a wide open shot for one of the players on Toronto to make a shot on the net, and he tried to pass it and completely missed the player, and it screwed up the rest of the play.
Yeah.
It's a constant. It's happening all the time.
Yeah.
It's happening all the time. They've got too many playmakers on their team. But there's so many guys who can shoot the puck. So shoot the puck.
Shoot the puck.
Oliver Ekman-Larsson, his shot's unreal.
Yeah.
He never gets to shoot it.
He never gets to use it.
He never gets to use his shot.
That was our big problem with him when he was on the Canucks too. Same thing. And it's true. Like, and it's funny because I argue all the time about Tyler Myers being that kind of player who all he does is shoot the puck, but he's always so slow with his slap shot. So he gets the puck, settles the puck, and then he winds up like so slow, and then the other guys just take the puck away because he's in the middle of a windup. I'm like, is that because he's 5 foot or 6'7"? Like, is that why? Because really, like, you could wrist it on net if you want to and maybe get a shot that way, but like, I don't understand the mentality. But at least he's trying to shoot. I'll give him that. Whereas other guys, they would rather just pass the puck around, try to get that perfect shot through.
Like when you think of Canucks players, obviously you probably think about certain players, their effort and the cohesiveness of the team.
Yeah.
I look at, again, Mitch Marner after that game, quoting saying that he liked the way that the Leafs played, that he thought they played well in the last couple of games, that they've just been giving up plays that allowed the other team to score. Mm-hmm. And I can't give credence to that. Like, your head needs to be in the game. Like, are you seeing the same thing with the Canucks in terms of, the scores that they're getting kind of outdone by?
Yeah. It's interesting how you get almost polar opposite response, though, from somebody like Mitch Marner and Chris Tanev, right? Where Tanev's like, no, we weren't defensively sound. Like, this is our problem. Whereas Marner's like, no, we were good. It's funny you get that different perspective.
It almost seems like there's a disconnect going on there.
Yeah. And then you get a comment from somebody like Nylander, right?
You're just trying to get me fired up, aren't you, Joe? You're just trying to do it.
I thought this was a perfect little segue for you.
I am so far done with William Puckn Nylander. It's not even funny. Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to like this player since they drafted him, and yes, he can produce. When he's not producing, he is god-awful. Yeah. God-awful to watch. No level, or no effort level, no compete. He doesn't give a shit. Man, oh man, Joe, thanks a lot. After the game against Dallas, he said, oh, we've lost 3 in a row. What's the big deal? We're in first place.
Yeah.
That's the attitude that needs to be gone now.
Imagine he said that in the playoffs. Right? Imagine you're down 3-0 in a series.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality. What's the problem? What do you mean, what's the problem? You're about to go home, and these fans, these Canadian fans, have been waiting for 30 years for a team to win the cup. What's the problem? That's the problem. Start giving a crap.
Here's what I'll say. If you're watching Toronto and you think Mitch Marner is the problem, you're an idiot. Now, don't get me wrong. What he said the other night, I don't like that attitude either. But as far as the play on the ice, besides the odd stupid giveaway, Mitch Marner is not the problem with this team. Players like William Nylander are the problem with this team and every team. Mm-hmm. Any team who has a player that has that attitude and that level of compete, that is the problem.
Yeah, when you see a player, I'll use Tyler Myers for example because I saw this the other night when they played Winnipeg, where you see a player who is supposed to be trying to stop a player from getting a breakaway and scoring, but he stops skating. Like, to me, that's a perfect example of that. And I've seen that for a long time out of players like JT Miller, when that's the big problem that fans have with him, is that sometimes he just stops working. And then maybe it's because he's out there too long and he's tired or whatever, but shift management, right? Like, be better. You're a hockey player. You're a professional hockey player. You should know better than to be out there for two minutes, when something like this could happen and it costs your team in the end. Tyler Myers is a defenseman. He's used to that kind of thing. When he stops skating, that's going to cost your team.
Yeah.
But a player like, I think Nylander is a good example of that, where you see that sort of don't give a crap mentality on the ice, and you're just like, bench the guy. He's hurting the team more than he's helping.
Here's a question. I don't watch post-game interviews for the Canucks, at least not very often, unless I'm happy to catch the highlights.
Yeah.
Do any of the Canucks players come out without a shirt on and do an interview?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Let me think. No.
The point being is that you really would have to think about it.
Yeah.
I could probably list how many times in the last week there's been a Leafs player come out without their shirt off.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care. Like, be professional. Oh, man,
I totally see what you mean, that term, the country club mentality, right? Like, it really feels like they are. It almost feels like they're doing it in spite of all this stuff. Like,
almost a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, like they're like, we don't care what anybody thinks of us. We're going to do whatever the hell we want, whether we're winning or losing.
You guys are getting paid. You haven't won anything. You haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this thought process comes from. I'm going to rein this in a little bit because I've been getting heated, but yeah. I really don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many times this season alone I've said only about William Nylander. One or two more strides and you win that puck battle,
That's right.
man.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. And I just don't get it. And it's just so frustrating. Because you can see it as fans, and I'm sure Berube, if he's not bald already, he will be by the time his lease tenure's done. I mean, honestly, and it's just, I think there needs to be
accountability.
Accountability. The team needs a shakeup. Yeah. This core four, I know they've been talking about it X amount of years. I just don't think they can move any of the players.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
But the culture needs to change. Berube is a start. But the roster needs a shakeup, I think. And I don't think it's Matthews, and I don't think it's Marner, so take your pick.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the same thing that Vancouver's going through, too. They need a shakeup to get that fire lit under them, right? And whether that means trading JT Miller, I don't see them trading Elias Pettersson. He's a young talent on their core. I can't see them doing that. That being said, anything's possible. If somebody offers something that's, mind-boggling, of course, we're going to go that route. But they definitely need something to get that fire lit under them. And, even if that means getting rid of a coach, I'm not saying Tocchet specifically, but, getting rid of one of the assistant coaches, I don't know. We'll see. But they definitely need something to change.
I'm done, unfortunately, with Max Domi playing.
And Ty, too.
Bring back Ty, for that matter.
Playing at center. He kind of came out during the playoffs last year in terms of being a reliable center, but he's not big enough. He's not defensively responsible enough. He doesn't
win any draws.
Done nothing.
He doesn't win.
Almost 2 months.
I think he was, if I remember correctly, in the game against Vancouver, he was less than 500 on the draws, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
Now he was going up against, if I remember correctly, he was going up against Teddy Bluger, if I remember correctly. And Bluger's really good on the faceoffs. He's not the best, but he's really good on the draws. So I mean, I don't know if I'm taking away from Domi in that case, but he needs to be better, obviously.
Berube talked to him at practice the other day, and Berube was asked about it, and he basically said, I talked to Max, and I basically said, you're a physical player. You can be a physical player. For some reason, I thought Domi was way more of a physical player than he actually appears to be, at least in his tenure with Toronto.
Because of his dad, probably.
I suppose, but he's got the stocky body. He's 5'10", 215. Like, that's a pretty solid boy, right? And Berube says to him, I need you to... Man, sorry.
No, I'm laughing. I'm more laughing. I'm more laughing because you said he's 5'10", and I'm just thinking, like, to you, that's big.
That's huge.
But to a hockey player, that's a short guy.
But what I mean by that is being
right.
5'10" as a hockey player and 215, that's a small, like a compact guy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're not lanky, you're not fat, you're solid, right?
You can be a bulldog when you're that size, for sure.
And Berube said to him, hey man, use your body more. Like, use that body to win those puck battles. You're a good skater, you're one of the best on the team, but use that body in battles. Separate the puck from the defenseman. Finish your check. We know you can finish your check. The only time he plays physically is if he's pissed off.
Yeah.
And then he goes and elbows guys or cross-checks them in the lower back.
Gets fined $5,000.
Don't get me started on elbowing. There's something I want to talk to you guys about a little bit later.
I have a feeling I know.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point, right? Is that there's a few players on the Leafs that, they'll play physical when they're down 4-1. Mm-hmm. And that's not when the time is needed to be physical and use your body and win those battles, right? So I completely am on the train with you. I like him as a player, as a role / support player. If they're going to put him on, say, the wing on the top line, that's fine.
Yep.
But let him... I don't think that's a great idea if Matthews and Marner are together. You can't have that many playmakers on one line. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think at center, the experiment should be over.
Yeah, like I'm getting to the point with the way that he's playing that I'm glad that he came back to the Leafs, but I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm open to him being traded. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of rumors for players out there right now, even ones that you're not expecting. One of the things that the Leafs are leaning towards right now is getting a third line center, and there's some that are out there that haven't been talked about a lot.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some possible trades that we might see across the league, because I know last episode, I believe, we talked a little bit about possible moves. We also have some rumors and stuff that are out there, so let's maybe talk about that.
One of the ones that's obviously been for the Canucks that has been reported a lot. One involving the Leafs, one involving the Rangers. The one involving the Rangers was a 1-for-1 for JT Miller for Mika Zibanejad,
which I heard Vancouver turned down.
Why wouldn't they?
I was going to say, which I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I also heard a rumor that Zibanejad doesn't want to go to Vancouver, which, I mean, who cares what you want? If they have the ability to trade you, they can. But does he have a no move clause?
Yeah, so Mika Zibanejad does have a no move clause.
Yeah, so he does have a choice in terms of where to go. But JT Miller does too. Rumor has it he does want to go to New York, though, if he does get moved. So there's always that possibility.
I've also heard that JT Miller be open to going to the Leafs, and the Leafs rumor that was out there, Elliot Friedman had put it out that if Morgan Riley would waive his no move clause, that Riley for JT Miller 1-for-1 was something that was floated out there.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the I mean, everything's speculation anyway, but I just feel like a lot of the sort of fodder that Elliot Friedman puts out there, he does it, I think, more than anything, I think he does it for fun, because I think it gets the people talking, especially on Twitter. But yeah, like, I really feel like I'm not sure JT Miller would be willing to go to Toronto, because going from one Canadian market to another one, especially in a difficult market, going to another difficult market, I just can't see him wanting to do something like that. I can see him wanting to go to New York only for the fact that he played there before and he knows what's expected. Right, like, he's not going to go in there and be the star. He'll be one of the stars, but he definitely won't have the same kind of expectations of him playing in a Canadian market.
I can see it now. JT Miller's traded to Toronto, and 1 week later, the headline on TSN is Paul Marner reaches out to JT to get him to stop bullying his son, or something along those lines. I can just see it. Please, for the love of God, don't trade JT Miller to Toronto, because half the players on the team will be crying within a couple of days.
Is that before or after TSN reports on what Marner had for breakfast?
No, it's what Matthews had for
Matthews.
breakfast.
Sorry, yes.
Come on, man.
I know. Sorry. I saw that report yesterday, and I wasn't sure if they just repeat it every day or how does that work.
2 poached eggs on toast.
And pancakes.
Good old TSN, Toronto Sports Network.
We don't want him to hurt himself.
Yeah.
So what other rumors are we seeing out there?
There's lots of discussion about Taylor Hall being available right now, as well as Ryan Donato from Chicago.
Winnipeg's an interesting situation. They're looking to upgrade, for sure, but they have some expiring players.
I kind of feel like they don't need to upgrade right now.
Well, but those are the teams that usually do, and then you're like, well, we're all screwed.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I compared this Winnipeg team now to what Vancouver was in 2011.
Yeah,
they were the President's Trophy winning team. They went into the offseason like the favorites, right? And they were really good. Except that first series against Chicago, they struggled to close out that series. They had a 3-0 lead, and then Chicago came back and tied it to make a 3-3. And then that Game 7 game, it went to overtime. So it was like they were this close.
Yeah.
So Winnipeg could have a very similar problem if they're not careful.
Yeah, it's very true.
Sorry, Paul.
No, that's okay. So about Taylor Hall and Ryan Donato, 5 teams are kind of said to be kind of looking at them right now. The Boston Bruins, the Detroit Red Wings, the Los Angeles Kings, the New Jersey Devils, and surprisingly enough, the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, I believe that. Donato is a defenseman, right?
No, he's a center.
Oh, well, so if Vancouver gets rid of JT Miller, of course they're going to need another center back. If you can get a first-round pick or something, then you can easily flip that for a decent centerman. So I can see that. I can see something like that.
Detroit's interesting that you say looking to kind of upgrade because they've been surging a bit the last little bit. I think they're 7-2 or 7-3 in their last 10.
Much better season this year than last year.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, that Atlantic Division is jammed, right? And there's going to be a lot of good teams in every division, but there's going to be a few good teams in the Atlantic alone that are not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. And
they're going to end up with good seasons, and Detroit's kind of working their way towards that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Detroit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Eisman's been trying to improve the team for years, and he's picked up players, and for whatever reason things haven't been gelling. Maybe a Taylor Hall is what they're missing. Who knows?
It feels like the NHL is so funny because it feels like some years you look at Yzerman and he's just praised constantly for all the moves he's making, and then all of a sudden nothing happens. And then this year it's like the same thing. You kind of go, is this part of the Yzer plan? I think really what it comes down to is some players just like they go through phases of, ups and downs. And, maybe whatever the problem that Detroit has, they're not where they're supposed to be because those specific players, they need more time developing.
It's very true. Yeah.
I have a quick question before we continue. Are we going to be doing like a live Puckn Pod trade deadline day? I've already booked the day off work, to be honest with you, but I just
maybe a YouTube live or something.
That could
be fun.
That would be pretty cool.
I've also got it booked off as well. So
I say we shouldn't promise anything because I don't know technologically how we can do that. So, let's not make promises we can't keep, but I would love to do something like that for sure.
We can keep the setup we have here. We got a giant 65-inch 4K TV right behind us here. We could anyway.
Yep. I mean, even if it's not live, we could do a podcast for sure and just record it. And as we these are our live reactions, but not live to you.
Or it'll just be 8 hours of there being nothing recorded at all because nothing happens on trade.
That's true too. I think we're probably going to see some action, but it'll be interesting to see. And hopefully, for the audience at home, if you don't understand what we're saying, I do most of the technical work when it comes to setting things up. So I've never done a live recording before, so I don't know what to kind of do in that avenue. So I don't want to make a promise I can't keep quite yet in terms of a live show, but at least we can do a recording anyway and kind of give people what they want to hear.
Yeah, and I usually with the trades, you tend to see a lot of them lately. A couple either a week before the deadline, a couple of weeks before the deadline. It's been a little bit more consistent that way instead of all the trades happening right on the last day.
Well, I think that's a little bit why I'm so bummed about Vancouver right now, because this time last year we'd already made 2 trades to get to this point, but we haven't done anything yet. So maybe the trades that they want to do are just that much harder to do this time around. I don't know. We'll see.
One that I myself would float out there, just because I was reading earlier about Florida and their contract impasses with Sam Bennett right now. Now they're saying there's likelihood that they wouldn't trade him, that they still want to extend him. However, his name is being floated out there, and teams are inquiring about him right now. I would be interested, only because I'm talking down about Max Domi right now, whether Florida's one of the 17 teams on his no trade list. Because if not, I wouldn't mind seeing, because one of the things that Florida would want in return is an impact player. I wouldn't mind seeing Domi and whatever else they need to add into a trade like that to get pick. Sam Bennett, because Sam Bennett's the third line center that they would be missing.
Probably a decent pick going back the other way for sure.
Yeah, like they have a second, Florida's second this year. They have their first for next year.
Domi
in a third would probably be recent. A decent,
especially on an expiring contract.
Yeah.
Domi and a Robertson. Robertson, I like his shot, but he's an undersized forward, and they've got other players that can fill his spot, in my opinion, on that.
Do you know approximately what Bennett's salary is right now?
4.75, I believe.
That money would work.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind adding another jerk to the team. Absolutely.
Like, he screams to me, Berube player.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, 1,000,000%. That's exactly the type of player Berube wants. Exactly the type of player that I'm surprised the Leafs don't have more of on their team, considering their head coach is Craig Berube.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see two things. One, what Washington's going to do because of the season they're having. They've got $2.5 million in cap space right now, and whatever creativity they can have. But in tandem with that, what's Columbus going to do? Yeah. They've got $19 million in cap space. There's got to be teams that are going to call them and be like, hey, I need you to eat half this salary. We'll give you a third-round pick, blah, blah. Like, how many times is that going to happen this year?
I can see Columbus doing something like that in the draft more than the deadline. I can see them making moves on the deadline, but I don't know necessarily that they're going to try and go for it this year. With the season that they've had and with everything that's gone down this whole year. I can see them, getting some draft capital with that.
See, and I would tend to think that they would be more active at the trade deadline because prices are inflated.
That's true too, and actually they could get their draft capital at the trade.
They're going to get more at the trade deadline.
That's true.
You may get a third round pick for eating salary, whereas at the draft maybe you only get a fifth round pick.
Yeah.
That's the way I would kind of look at it. But $19 million in cap space.
It's crazy.
That's massive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're barely at the floor for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Don't get me wrong. There's unforeseen circumstances that is part of the reason they have so much cap space. Yeah. But from a business perspective, taking the heart out of the game a little bit, from a business side, I think this is kind of a crucial trade deadline for them to make some strides with their rosters and with their team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. That makes a lot of sense, too, because, like you said, everything's kind of inflated right now, and, a lot of teams are going to be calling them to try to get rid of some of their top-end players so that they can improve their teams.
I think I'm going to just throw this out there. We'll see what happens, but my prediction now is that Washington is going to go hard for somebody like Ryan O'Reilly. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to try to, because Ryan O'Reilly can play wing if he needs to. He's
also an incredible center.
That's what I mean. It'd be silly to play him at wing, but you could.
I wonder if anybody's going to take a swing at Mark Stone.
Well, just put him on LTIR and wait till the playoffs.
He's a proven playoff performer. The guy wins puck battles better than anyone. He's a player I would kill to have on my team, even at his age.
Yeah,
I agree. The Pittsburgh Penguins are probably looking to make a bunch of moves. They just put Tristan Jarry on waivers.
That was so weird when I saw that headline. I went, what is happening?
I was honestly surprised nobody picked him up. He cleared waivers today. So
I guess he would have, yeah.
It's probably the cap hit, 5.25.
It's got to be the cap hit, but just, I don't know. It's almost worth it. He's a decent goalie.
That's probably why it was done, just to see if anybody would take that salary off their hands, right? Yeah.
Hey, if they're willing to part with Crosby, which we know they're not, but we know they're not, but probably Malkin. I can see Malkin getting traded.
There's rumors out there right now that the Leafs are looking to still add more D-men.
They want a D-man?
Yeah.
So
it's probably because Hakanpää is.
Wouldn't they just go to the Devils for that?
Yeah. That is true.
I think Hakanpää's practicing. But I just don't. How much cartilage do you have left on that knee, man? I just don't understand. He's played, 3 games this year? Been injured twice? I don't know. I don't understand it. I like the player. Or on paper, I like the player. I haven't had a sample size of what he can actually do.
What is he, 6'6"?
At least he might be 6'7" as well. Like he's also a big boy. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need to skate well because he just takes up the entire defensive zone. But
I'll say, just going back to our discussion about what's frustrating us with our teams, that's one of the things that's really bothered me so far with Vancouver is that you've got 3 really tall, like physically big D-men who don't use their bodies. And it's just infuriating. It's just infuriating because, to me, it's like utilize what you're there for. And that was the reason they were signed, was because of their stature. And they're not utilizing that enough. And it's costing them games because of it. And puck battles.
I would say my only complaint maybe with Chris Tanev so far this year is the fact that he isn't as physical as I thought he was. As far as I'm not talking about Luke Shen physical. I'm not talking about erasing guys
I miss Luke
through
Shen.
The glass, right? I mean, hey, I'd love that. You want to do that? Please do. I'll watch it all day long. I'll give you applause. But I just mean I figured more finishing your check. I see him finishing his check maybe once or twice a game.
Yeah.
And I figured that realistically, we should be doing this more like once or twice a shift. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I would say for physicality-wise, that's probably my only complaint about Chris Tanev this year. Yeah. He's been excellent otherwise.
And he's not one of those super tall players either.
He's 6'4".
Yeah, 6'4".
He is...
He's tall.
In retrospect, he's pretty tall.
Yeah.
Beefy too.
But
right?
He's not like 6'8". No, he's not like 6'7", 6'8". You know what I mean? He's not there because of how tall he is, kind of thing. Whereas I look at somebody like Tyler Myers, who does use his body. I'll give him credit for that. He does use his body, especially in specific moments where it's needed. But then I look at somebody like Derek Forbort, who's he's a bottom pairing defenseman, but at the same time, you're playing for a reason. You need to be able to utilize your size to win puck battles. And if you're not doing that, then what's the point? If you're just going to sit there and try to poke the puck away, you're not really utilizing what you're there for.
Speed's one thing to the game, but I don't think it's everything. Like you can posture yourself to be in a good position to not even necessarily hit the guy, but have your body in the way.
For sure.
I used to do that all the time. I wasn't the fastest guy when I played hockey, but I always got myself in the right spot that I didn't get them clear lane to the net.
I'm overweight, so for me, I just used my size. Like when I did play hockey, I would put my body between the guy and the puck, and very rarely could they get me out of the way. So I would take the puck away and make a first pass, and that's typically what I did. Utilize your size. I feel like this podcast, we're kind of teaching young people how to play because we're talking about things that our teams aren't doing. But really, utilize your size. If you're a bigger person, 100%. Put your body between the player and the puck so that you can win that puck battle and make that pass.
Well, some people have pride in their skill and the score, and some people have pride in the defensive play that they can do.
And some people have pride in both, that's what a good centerman is going to do, right? He's going to win the puck battles and he's going to, score those important goals too. So you got to play both ends of the ice.
I feel like being a shit disturber, so I'm going to ask you a question, Joe. Seeing as though Connor McDavid is not going to be penalized for his elbow last night on Marcus Johansson, what do you think the Oilers might do at the trade deadline, or do you even care?
Yeah, I don't care. Honestly, I part of me, the question that I ask is how long is it going to take before the NHL penalizes him or does something to him for the things that he does? Because it's insane to me. And I'm looking at the comments on Twitter that all the Oilers fans responding going, oh, good. Like when somebody had posted, he's not going to be looked at by disciplinary. He's not going to be fined, anything like that. Oilers fans are like, good. It was a dive anyway. And you look at the replay. He clearly lifts his elbow up and hits the guy in the face. I'm sorry. That's a penalty. But not to McDavid, apparently.
Do I think it was egregious? No, I do not.
I'm not saying that either, but a penalty's a penalty. If it was the other way around, we both know that, that person would have been fined, would have been probably spoken to, maybe he had to be suspended. You never know, because it's like you said, he's just lifting the elbow up to hit the guy in the face. It's a clear action.
There has been less this year that have gotten fines.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
100%.
It's baffling to me. It's so baffling. But it shows to me that it's really just the NHL protecting its star players.
All right, now we both got each other fired up this podcast.
I almost threw my laptop, but it's okay. We're good.
Your turn, Paul. How can we get you fired up, pal?
Really.
I don't know.
I'm going to think about it.
Do you have any more trade rumors?
Not so much trade rumors, but the fact that there's the Winnipeg Jets are looking to add a defenseman. The Edmonton Oilers have a bunch of cap space that's open because of Evander Kane. John Klingberg is possibly making his way back
To the Oilers? I
hope
hope
the talk is about the Oilers, actually, or Toronto, for that matter.
He can go to Edmonton. Klingberg.
Klingberg? Yeah, go ahead.
He can go to Edmonton.
Yeah,
That's why I'm saying that, because, like, come on, really? Every once in a while I'll go on Puckpedia and they have that, just like what they used to have on, Cap Friendly, they used to have that sort of mock trade thing where people can put their trade suggestions down. And every time I saw an Oiler one, including the Canucks, especially when the whole JT Miller and Elias Pettersson being traded thing was going down, all the trade returns for like JT Miller to Edmonton was Evander Kane, and I'm like, hell no. Who says no? Vancouver says no.
I say no.
And all its fans. I don't want that guy on my team.
Yeah. A name I keep hearing constantly in Leafland, Paul, is Yanni Gourde. And that, like, when you're talking about adding a third line center, that's what that is. That's who he is, right? And really, that's the only name that I hear kind of predominantly consistent is Yanni Gourde.
It actually surprises me to hear that, because Seattle loves that guy.
Oh, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
That's my point. Like, didn't they just re-sign him too? Like recently?
He's making $5.5 million.
Yeah.
It's a big cap hit. I don't know if Toronto can pull it off. I don't know how, but I mean, hey, that's a player you want, right?
Double retention.
I guess,
possible.
yeah. It's going to have to be.
It probably will be a player for player.
And in addition to that, Tavares just went down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's thought to be super. It's not thought to be necessarily serious, but we're still talking probably 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
The deadline's 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
So there isn't really a lot of buffer time there. If he's 4 weeks, it's then we all know 2 to 3 weeks before they're probably back into serious game shape. So now we're already past it. So this is kind of crucial in my opinion. And I don't know. I'm curious.
You're talking about centers. There are centers that are rumored to be available right now. Brock Nelson from the Islanders is one of them. The Dallas Stars have said to look into him, so have the Leafs. I think he would be a good fit in terms of what they need for a third-line center. A little bit on the older side. He's 33 years old. His cap hit is $6 million this year, so a deal like that would be hard to make. Dallas might have more space for that. The Flames are interested in Dylan Cousins, and there's been a lot of talk about
everybody wants Dylan Cousins.
Yeah.
Except Buffalo.
It's so funny because, like, every time somebody mentions, this team is interested in that player, it's like, everybody wants that player, of course. But it's going to take, so much to get that player. He's coveted by Buffalo, even though you say except Buffalo. Yeah. But he is coveted by the team, so it's going to take a lot for them to trade him away. Yeah, everybody. I mean, Vancouver was in on Cousins when all those rumors about Pettersson and Miller were going down again, right? So yeah, everybody wants him.
I try to make an effort to not talk about the Ottawa Senators.
The who?
Yeah, but I'm really curious to see what Staios is going to do, because this team could push.
Yeah,
really could push.
Yeah.
I mean, they are right now. And as much as that's painful to say, man, oh man, I'd still rather say that than Montreal's doing well. But anyway, that's
and they're not, so it's okay. Yeah.
But I'm really curious. There's a lot of Canadian teams this year that one or two players could really make that extra push, right?
I agree.
And I mean, we all know how jammed the playoff spots are. I still am an advocate of going back to 1v8, but in that playoff structure, I guess we'll see. Because I think it's going to be talked about this offseason. I think we're just about at CBA negotiating time again. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But there's going to be lots of good teams in every division that don't get a chance, or they're going to be out first round.
Yeah,
you're going to have your 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 3, and then And yet in the standings, they're only separated by 3 points.
Yeah.
Or 4 points. And
it sucks because when you think about it, like, you know, and then you look at the draft floor and it's like all American teams drafting all the high players.
Always.
And you're just like, you know, that's frustrating. Vancouver's never had a first overall pick, you know that? Never.
Yeah, you were mentioning that. I remember that.
It's sad.
Of the 5 teams that are probably major sellers this year, Nashville, the New York Rangers, the New York Islanders, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the San Jose Sharks, which of those teams do you think is likely to trade a big name player, and who do you think they'll trade them to?
Well, I guess it depends on a big name player, who the big name player is. For me, out of all those teams, I'd say Nashville probably.
Yeah, probably Ryan O'Reilly, I'd say, is going to be one of the biggest fish in that lot. What were the other teams again, you said?
The New York Rangers,
Yeah.
the New York Islanders, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the San Jose Sharks.
I'm not so sure there's players on the Islanders other than kind of role players that stick out for me. They're not going to trade Bo Horvat or somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
Like a real impact player or, Anders Lee or anything like that. That's not going to happen. San Jose, again, you're probably looking at more role-type players if they make moves at all. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I would.
There's
say,
lots of options.
I say Nashville, but obviously most people would say New York is most likely to make a move. However, the only way I see New York making a big move, I should say, a big splash, is if another team is willing to make a big splash right back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it's going to be big player for big player, and I just can't see
Blockbuster.
I can't see New York kind of going, okay, I'll trade Keandre Miller for a third-round pick. I just don't see that.
And Zibanejad, who's probably the sexiest name from the Rangers right now, he has a no-move clause, and he's not playing well.
That's right.
So how sexy is that name
Exactly.
actually, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rangers make a big move and for it to be Chris Kreider.
I mean, that's probably the one player, yeah, but again, we're talking about an older player, high cap hit. These names can be attractive in certain circumstance, but what are the likelihood of it happening because of those restrictions?
And what's the return?
And the return,
Like, if it's a Chris Kreider for... I'll speak hypothetically for Vancouver. If it's Chris Kreider for JT Miller, okay, that's cool, but I feel like there needs to be more included with that.
Definitely.
See, when you mention Chris Kreider, the first team for me that sticks out would be Ottawa. Mm-hmm. Trying to trade for someone like Chris Kreider. Some playoff experience, that big body in front. You've already got complement players with Pinto and Shabbat on the back end, Brady Tkachuk up front. Kind of these big players that like to cause a bit of havoc. And I think he would probably complement pretty well.
Yeah.
But again, moving pieces, right?
Yeah, it's always interesting when it comes to anything obviously trade related. It's always fun discussion. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot so far.
I have a feeling in the next 6 to 8 weeks, each episode there's going to be a trade or two that we can talk about moving forward because it's getting to that time and it's getting to crunch time.
We talked a lot about teams, Canadian teams specifically, winning that first overall pick. Vancouver's never had that pick. Toronto's had that first overall pick. In some seasons you might even say they've tanked to get that specific point. But is that something you see in different sports too? Like, do we see that in the NBA, for example? Yeah,
sometimes you do tend to see a team, I guess what you would call tank, to try and get that first overall pick. If we're talking about that, looking at the Toronto Raptors this year, they have been very underwhelming, and they're probably you could probably say that they're kind of in that tank mode right now in regards to the way that the season's gone for them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way management runs a team, and they're not doing anything in terms of making moves to improve that team. To me, that's tanking.
They realize where they're at, not only in the standings, but as an organization as far as depth goes. Now, what I will say is a game like basketball where you have 5 players that are playing at one given time. Having said that, hockey, you only have 5 playing at the same time, too. But what I mean is that those 5 players basically play the whole game.
Yeah.
With the odd substitution here and there. Basketball, you see a lot more diversity, if you will, in the standings.
Yeah.
Right? In a game like hockey, even if you've had a bad season, you're probably still over 500. with the odd exception of maybe 1 or 2 teams out of 32. You have a bad season in basketball, you're like 40 games under 500.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like you can literally have a record of like 20-60 in basketball. And like you don't see that in hockey, right? Not really. Mm-hmm. And I mean, baseball can kind of be the same way, but I don't think it's still to the extreme that basketball is. And when you're bad, you're bad.
One thing I've noticed with basketball teams, especially when it comes to playoff sitting in the standings and stuff like that, you will see teams with under 500 records in that 8th spot and making the playoffs in basketball. You rarely would ever see that in baseball or hockey.
Yeah,
I don't think I've actually ever seen a hockey team make it into the playoffs with an under 500 record.
So let's talk a little bit about what makes it seem like Toronto is tanking specifically based on those stats.
I guess one of the things you can say right now is their team defense is probably one of the worst in the league. They had a stretch of games back in December there where they lost the points that the other team scored against them. The Knicks had 139 points compared to their 125. The Grizzlies had 155 points in the game compared to Raptors 126. The Hawks had 136 points compared to the Raptors 107. And the Celtics gave them the largest margin of defeat that they've ever had in franchise history, 125-71.
Crazy. So, like, what do you think, causes that? Obviously, you say lack of defense, but like, is that a coaching issue or is that just the players that they have?
I look at the team the way it is right now. While Radivojevich, I think, is a good team coach, like in terms of I think talking to each of his players, I don't think he's a very good NBA level coach, to be honest.
He's
a good filler for for the tanking season.
I'll say something about basketball also in addition to that is that, and we've kind of touched on this before, in basketball, one player can make the difference in a game. Hockey, you don't see that.
True.
Baseball, one player can make a difference in a game.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have a semi-talented team, if you've got that all-star, if you've got a LeBron James on your team, you're already halfway above the rest of the teams in the league.
Yeah, like you're guaranteed so many points per game.
The Raptors don't have that. They're trying to win by committee right now, and Scotty Barnes is their best player, and he's in his 3rd year in the league. Right? So when you're relying on players like that, although he's going to be a star, I mean, you can argue he's a star in Toronto if there is a star in Toronto.
Yeah.
But, you need to surround that player with more than just development players. And unfortunately, that's all the Raptors have right now. They've got talent like crazy. They've drafted well.
Yeah.
But that's all there are. They're playing with prospects and draft picks right now. They're not playing with NBA All-Star caliber players, which in the past they have had 1 or 2 of those basically every season.
Veteran leadership, stuff like that.
Even going back to last year with Siakam and Anunoby, they traded them, right, for picks. And some of those picks have already been drafted, and they're playing on the team right now. That sort of thing, or they're going to be playing for the team, it's just not happening right now. It's just too early after those draft picks have come through, and they just haven't materialized to talent on the court.
Well, right now, the team, at the halfway mark of the season, they're at 41 games right now. They're 10-31.
Wow.
They were 8 and 29 a couple of games ago. They did win 2 games in a row. They are sitting...
But they just beat the powerhouse Boston Celtics.
Sorry.
Rate Brandon's Boston accent there, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know in the comments.
6, maybe.
Overall, they are sitting... They are the 4th worst team in the league right now.
4th worst. Okay, so...
At 10-31, they're the 4th worst team, Joe.
That's crazy. Who is the worst team, and what's their record?
Washington Wizards.
What's their record?
They are...
They still have Michael Jordan playing for them, that's why.
At, 63 now?
Yeah. He'd probably still kill half the league, man.
And it cut to the scene in that documentary said, and I took that personally.
Washington Wizards are 6-33.
6-33, wow.
Even if they win their next 2 games, they're still worse than the Raptors.
So that's 4 fewer wins than the Raptors.
That's got to be hard to get up for a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
As much as you're being paid well,
I can't imagine they're selling out their games like.
Well, here's an interesting fact. Against the Celtics in Toronto the other day, they were almost sold out.
Yeah.
I almost called it the ACC.
To be fair, though, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember when Vancouver was still a team, they would sell out their games too because of the teams they were playing, right? Like I went and saw Indiana play. It was exciting just to be there in the presence of, Reggie Miller. Yeah.
But yeah, I think at Scotiabank the other night there was like 18,500 was the capacity there, and that's almost a sellout there, if not a sellout. Yeah. And your team's lost 31 games. You've lost 75% of your games this year, and you can still put some butts in the seats. I guess that's good.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it was like a kids eat free night or something. It could have been something like that, right? But
something I want to, sorry, this is off topic, but something I want to discuss at some point with you fellas is the idea of PWHL, the Women's Hockey League, because recently they came to Vancouver, and it was a Toronto and Montreal played each other, and it was a sold-out game, and apparently the energy level from the fans was really, really high. It was really, really positive. Do you foresee a team, and I know, like I said, this is off topic, but do you foresee a team ever coming to other cities like Vancouver, Calgary, things like that, where the PWHL has a Canadian presence as well as an American one?
Oh, 100%. They're hockey hotbeds. Like the male teams that we have right now, you can see the fan base just as equally probably being interested in the PWHL. I would gladly welcome Vancouver.
It would be surprising for me to see somebody like the Aquilinis not want to purchase a team, because A, that's more money in your pocket, especially if you're selling out games like that, and B, it's just more excitement for hockey, right?
Yeah.
So the Giants play the Langley Event Center, right? Do you know what the capacity is there, or approximately?
I want to say it's about 8,000, something like that.
That's it, eh?
Yeah, it's not too high.
Is there another place other than Rogers Arena in Vancouver that could have capacity more than that?
Well, they did play out of the Pacific Coliseum, which is where Vancouver, the Canucks used to play before Rogers Arena was built. And then, like I say, the Vancouver Giants did play out of there before they built the Langley Event Center. And I think the capacity there is something like 15,000.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, like, you have the ability to play in other rinks and stuff like that.
Pretty sure Abbotsford's got a pretty good size rink,
it
too.
does. Yeah,
Abbotsford's, it's the AHL rink, so that one's, I don't know the actual capacity of that one. I want to say something like 10 or 11,000.
Yeah.
It's not going to be comparable to like Rogers Arena per se, but definitely decent for a crowd size. It's like something I would love to have here in Nanaimo, like something like that.
Abbotsford Event Center is only 7,046.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I think for them to have a PWHL team, ideally you'd want like minimum 12,000 capacity, but you'd have to, now you're talking either playing at the Coliseum or offsetting against the Canucks.
I think that would be the right way to do it, especially when you consider the crowd that they had at that game. I feel like there's definitely people who want to see that, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to see that. I'm sorry for taking it off topic. I just thought about that when you were talking about selling out for games that for teams that shouldn't be selling out. It just reminded me of that. The idea that there is an interest in something other than what you're there for.
I'll make a quick point on it, and then we can maybe dedicate some more time on another episode. Mm-hmm. But what I will say is that, from my perspective, I don't watch PWHL games that much. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I'd enjoy it if I had the time, but I mean, the rare opportunity that I have a couple of hours to watch an NHL game is kind of where I put my focus usually. But the success that the PWHL has, I think, has exceeded the expectations of owners and managers and like head office for the PWHL, right? I think the fact that these players are creating careers for themselves outside of international hockey and having a place to play, making salaries, we know that the money's not necessarily there, but that doesn't mean that it won't be.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that kind of rapid success rate that the PWHL is having right now, I think the money will come, and then I think expansion is going to be a no-brainer.
Well, and all the more reason to do that sooner than later because of the fact that there's more money to be made for the owners, right? Yeah. Because the contracts are so low and all that kind of stuff, and which I hope does happen for the sake of the ladies so that they can make more money to play. But I mean, I've watched women's hockey thinking about the Olympics and things like that, where you see the competitive style. It's great hockey. It's exciting hockey. Really, really nice playmaking plays that happen. And specifically that game in Vancouver, Marie-Philippe Poulin, who's the star player for Montreal, she scored a pretty incredible goal. During that game in Vancouver, off basically while falling down, shot the puck in and it goes in the net. So it was really incredible. I apologize for taking it off topic, but I just thought that just reminded me of it, and I thought, That's definitely a discussion we should have about the PWHL and the potential for growth in Canada, I think.
100%. Well, going back to the NBA talk, Canada's only team is the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, we had a championship win in 2019. Kawhi Leonard, obviously, huge influence on that. Obviously got them into the next round with that memorable shot against the 76ers.
I'll never forget that.
Looking at the Raptors, the fact that, like I said, they're kind of in a tank year. They're not necessarily the last place team, but luckily there's a lottery system for the NBA draft. The top rated prospect this year, Cooper Flagg, is a 6'9" power forward that is supposed to be, in terms of the way that he plays, because he's quite dominant defensively, but quite impactful in front of the net, is supposed to be a little bit like Scottie Pippen, kind of Andre Kirilenko. So, cool. I don't see the Raptors making a run at the playoffs with a 10-31 record. My hope is that maybe they would get a guy like this. They made not a great trade for Jakob Poeltl, unfortunately, in my personal opinion, with the top 6 protected pick that they had. Unfortunately, they gave up a lot for Jakob Poeltl. You look at a guy like Cooper Flagg, some of the highlights that he shows on YouTube right now, he would be a great complementary piece for that team right now.
The question that is often asked when it comes to teams tanking is that a thing? Is that something that you see teams do? I'm a firm believer that an NBA team specifically, and probably NHL too for that matter, the players themselves are not going to be tanking so that the team can get a high draft pick. They don't care about that stuff. I think more than anything, they just aren't good enough, and that's what happens sometimes when they don't make it. But I
just can't see a professional athlete who has dedicated their life to something
exactly,
and worked so hard to get where they are. You don't make the NBA or the NHL or the MLB or, for that matter, Wimbledon, if you're not at the highest level competing, training, the amount of dollars that goes into it as far as when you're younger compared, working your way up through the ranks. There's just no way in my mind that a player would purposely try to lose a game unless the whole different bag of worms. But if there's gambling situations happening in games, things like that. But that's just, you generally don't see that. And I couldn't get behind anybody purposely throwing a game.
Considering the record that they have, this upcoming trade deadline is going to be big for them as well. They've only got the 1 pick so far for the first round, the 1 pick for the second round. I won't be surprised with the way Chris Boucher has been playing lately that they trade him. He's probably upped his value to a late first round pick now because he has been scoring buckets after buckets lately. Bruce Brown, who they acquired as part of the Siakam trade last year, he hasn't had a great time during his tenure with the Raptors, but still has value. So possibility that maybe they'll net a second round pick for him. It's one of those things. They shouldn't be tanking, but they technically are. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the offseason.
Have you guys ever seen the movie Trainwreck?
I haven't seen that movie. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on it. Because of some of the reviews is probably the reason I haven't.
Fair enough. What about you, Paul?
I definitely have.
Okay, so that LeBron James plays a part in this movie. So I'm just trying to transition, obviously, from basketball to our movie topic this week. But that movie, first of all, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was such a funny movie. I'm a big Bill Hader fan, so I watch a movie with Bill Hader in it, and it's just like I gotta sit down and enjoy it. But I really like Amy Schumer. I think she's hilarious, and she stars in this movie. And LeBron James is actually in the movie as well. He plays himself, basically, like a version of himself in this movie. But the reason why I'm talking about the movie Trainwreck is because we're transitioning to we're talking about not our favorite movies, but movies in general that are directed and written, produced, whatever, by Judd Apatow, who is very well known in the comedy market. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about some Judd Apatow movies, maybe including Trainwreck.
We don't spend a lot of time on comedy on our podcast, at least not so far.
Not enough,
so
anyway.
I thought it would be. I thought that this was a great idea for a topic. Is somebody like Judd Apatow, who has quite the resume as a director already, but then you look at some of his titles as a producer or a writer, and you're like, man, this guy's had his hand in everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
And especially with comedy. But I mean, it goes back to to TV. I mean, he wrote for SNL. He was doing that kind of stuff. He was doing writing for Academy Awards and stuff like that, right? So he's, like you said, he's had his hand in literally everything.
You talk about Trainwreck. He seems to find like hidden gems for kind of each and every one of his movies. Trainwreck in particular, I thought John Cena was hilarious in that film.
Yeah, definitely underrated for the character that he played, for sure. Yeah,
definitely.
And I give John Cena a lot of credit for his acting chops. Like he brought it, and that was probably the first movie he did where I was like completely opposite of what his wrestling persona is. You know what I mean? Just very, very
badass, beefy,
yeah,
like no nonsense kind of guy.
Pretty funny guy, actually. He does comedy well.
I look at other movies that Apatow was involved in, again, kind of had hidden gems. At the time, in 2008, when Pineapple Express came out, besides James Franco and Seth Rogen being like the headliners for that and being quite funny, Danny McBride got actually a lot more well-known because of his role in that film. Again, he's been working with Apatow for quite a while, but obviously his acting chops, his comedy chops are really got well-known, I think, in particular with that film.
Sometimes there are actors out there that play a specific character, especially comedic actors, where you think that's who their persona is, like in real life. Like I think there's no way Danny McBride isn't like this in real life. Like he's just a crazy person. But because I think the reason why I feel that way is because he kind of plays the same character in a lot of the stuff he's in.
Yes.
But like that character is so over the top in Pineapple Express that you're just like, oh my god, there's no way. There's no way he's like this in real life.
How is he alive still?
I know. Oh.
I got to say, guys, I was watching a highlight of the Golden Globes the other night. I don't know what's happened to Seth Rogen, but he's kind of turned into a bit of a handsome dude. I have never said that before in my life because he's like the epitome of like fugly, to be honest with you.
Dad bods.
If you take into consideration, the gross kind of curly hair, looks like he hasn't washed it since 97.
It's all gray now.
The laugh, like,
yeah.
How could you hear his laugh and go, oh my God, I want you? Like, it's just, that can't happen. That really can't happen. But I saw him at the Golden Globes and I was like, man, this guy looks kind of sophisticated. What the hell happened?
Yeah, I mean, I often say that what I've been told specifically is that men do get better looking with age.
Thank God.
Maybe that's his thing, but no, and I agree. I think it's funny that some people do kind of they change their look as they get older and stuff, and maybe he's becoming less of a kid, so to speak, and more of a grown up or whatever. But yeah, definitely interesting to see that look.
We could do a whole nother podcast episode on like movies or movie collections, so to speak, that directors tend to use
the same characters,
same actors. Yeah. And I think like Judd Apatow would probably fit right into that category.
Yeah, for me, it's like the Farrelly brothers, Judd Apatow,
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah,
Adam Sandler.
But I'm specifically choosing comedy in this area. But gotcha. Yeah, like Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah,
and they all kind of have the same space in my brain when I think of comedy movies. Probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Judd Apatow movie is The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I quote that movie regularly. And not only that, I was just talking to my stepdaughter about this movie because she's never seen it before. And she was looking for a movie to watch with her boyfriend. And I'm like, you guys need to watch The 40-Year-Old Virgin. It's so funny. It's so funny. From the moment the movie starts, there's comedy.
Bag of sand, man. Come on.
Kelly Clarkson.
But literally, the opening credits of the movie, when it starts, he wakes up out of bed with morning wood, and he's got to deal with that because he's a 40-year-old virgin, right? So it's just so funny, like from the get-go. I love when movies do that. When like they don't make you wait for the comedy; it just starts.
Yeah, I tell you, when I was thinking about this topic, and I thought, oh man, Judd Apatow has directed so many of these comedy type movies, blah blah blah, and then I kind of looked through the list a little bit, and really, he's had more of a resume successfully with being like a writer producer, actually than director, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
There's a couple of movies that he produced that I was looking back and I went, man, I had no idea he was even involved in those movies. Like some of my favorites from a kid. I'll just give you 2 examples in like the movie Heavyweights.
Yeah.
Have you seen Heavyweights, Paul?
I haven't, no.
So it's a really neat movie, actually. I think it's on Disney Plus, and it's essentially about kids going to fat camp, and it being kind of like a really fun fat camp, quote unquote. And then Ben Stiller comes in as like a really fit guy, and he buys the camp out from under everybody's feet, and then turns it into like an exercise camp, like a real fat camp, and not like a fun summer camp for kids that are fat.
That's almost the plot of Dodgeball. Almost,
yeah. and it's actually it's got some characters in it that you'd recognize for sure. There's 2 or 3 characters alone that were in the Mighty Ducks movies that you'd know, including Goldberg, the goalie. The goalie. But there's some pretty good one-liners from that one too. If you're bored and need an hour and a half to kill, I'd check out Heavyweights on
Bridesmaids.
Yeah.
He produced Bridesmaids.
Yeah. Celtic Pride.
Yeah.
You know, that was the second one for me that I saw on the list, and I went, wow.
Yeah. That goes
I
back.
haven't seen that in years.
That goes back a
great
few
movie.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel Stern. Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd, too. Good old Canadian guy.
That's right. Yeah.
It's, there's so many good names on this list.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that he's married to Leslie Mann?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So all the movies that she's in, like 40-Year-Old Virgin, they did the movie This Is 40, which is basically a spin-off of the 40-Year-Old Virgin,
Knocked
but
Up.
with Leslie Mann and Paul Rudd.
It was Knocked Up.
Oh, pardon me. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right. It's Knocked Up, not 40-Year-Old Virgin. So, yeah, it's a spin-off of Knocked Up, where they play the same characters, but they treat it like you'd never seen them before, kind of thing. And it's so funny what he gets her to do in those movies, right?
Yeah.
And but she's such a good actress too, like the way she performs and portrays that character, right?
And I think you guys will understand where I'm going with this. But everything that you see from Leslie Mann in those movies is Leslie Mann.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
That's what I mean. Like she doesn't care and he doesn't care, right? Like it's the point is they're trying to get the story, and then they probably sat down together and wrote that scene. You know what I mean? Like it's just cool to sort of see a married couple kind of go into something like a project like that and just not care what happens. You know what I mean? They're doing what they need to do for the comedy.
Yeah, you can see that tone in Apatow's films in regards to like it is bombastic comedy, but he does bring a serious relational side to a lot of his comedies as well. You see it in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, obviously, where the main character, Steve Carell's character, is transitioning from being the goofy virgin that he is to seriously trying to fall in love with his counterpart in the film.
Yeah.
You see it in Knocked Up with Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl. You see it in This Is 40 with the marriage between Leslie Mann's character and Paul Rudd's character. Like there's definitely a lot of bombastic comedy, but there's a serious side to it. And you see that with Apatow. And he's known to be, as much as he's funny, he's known to be a mentor too to a lot of comedians out there.
Totally.
And it obviously reflects in his films, and it reflects in kind of who he is.
I'm pretty sure he did stand-up comedy too for a while.
He did, yes. I do remember
which probably helps with his understanding of like how comedy works, right? Have you ever seen the movie The King of Staten Island with Pete Davidson?
I haven't seen the film, but I know of it.
Yeah, so we watched it. My wife and I watched it, and we were big SNL fans, so we were kind of interested in seeing like how Pete Davidson would do this. And it's nothing on him. Like I'm not going to sit here and say Pete Davidson was incredible in it, but the movie itself was really good, and I really thought that Bill Burr was like awesome in it.
Bill Burr's one of my favorite comedians, just period.
Absolutely incredible. And he's a great actor. Like if you've seen the movies he's done, like he does a really good job at playing this specific, style of character. He's not always a jerk in the movies he does. Like he's kind of a nice guy in this movie, The King of Staten Island. But like the way that he's introduced in the movie is so funny, and just that's Apatow for you. Like the way he kind of gets this story going, and it's just so funny. I can't really give too much away, but it's worth checking out. It's I think it's got a 7.1 rating on IMDb. So take that if you will, and go with it. But yeah, it's worth checking out. King of Staten Island.
Nice.
Yeah, to know. What I find is kind of cool with Judd Apatow. Obviously, he's had Adam Sandler in quite a few movies. You Don't Mess with the Zohan.
Zohan was awesome. I love that movie.
I do like that movie too. Funny People. Obviously, he had those are two of the big roles that he had with Apatow. Funny enough, him, Adam Sandler, and Judd Apatow were actually roommates at one point, which I never knew that.
Yeah.
That is interesting. And you know, that movie, Funny People, have you seen Funny People?
I have, yeah.
That movie got a lot of hate. I thought it was great. I really did. I enjoyed that movie a lot.
I did too. I think the reason why it got a lot of hate, though, to be honest, is because it's not a typical movie. It's not a typical Apatow movie. People go into it thinking they're going to watch 40-Year-Old Virgin or, Knocked Up or whatever. But it's almost like the dark side of comedy, right? Or dark side of stand-up comedy, I should say, where you kind of get things you don't expect. And I think that's what throws people off a little bit with it. I love that. I thought it's kind of an interesting take on it. And it's probably a lot of it's from Apatow's own experience.
One of my favorite scenes from that movie, and you guys probably don't even think it's that funny, but I just laughed so hard. And it's the scene where Adam Sandler is supposed to go and do stand-up for MySpace.
Oh.
And James Taylor is the opening act.
Yeah.
And then right at the end of it, because Seth Rogen had written a particular joke for Adam Sandler to say, and then right before Adam Sandler goes on, James Taylor ends his with Facebook. And then what's funny about it is the look that Adam Sandler turns and gives to Seth Rogen, like, are you serious? I just crack up every time.
Yeah, I love those subtleties, and I think that's the whole point of that movie is you get a different idea of what comedy looks like, right? It's a different perspective, especially with stand-up comedy, because it is brutal. Like it's brutal for stand-up comedians, and I get it. Like you see like the kind of hours they put into the craft of stand-up comedy. If you guys have ever had a chance to check out, there's a podcast called Kill Tony. It's a stand-up comedy podcast, and it's literally like Tony Hinchcliffe is a stand-up comedian. So he's been doing this podcast now for like 10 years, and he basically he's in like a comedy club that he owns, and he gives people 1 minute. So he pulls names out of a bucket. You have to volunteer to do this, but you don't put your name in the bucket. He pulls names out of a bucket, and then you get a minute. If he calls your name, you get a minute to try to be a stand-up comedian. And whether you bomb or you do awesome, that depends on the audience's reactions and stuff like that. And he'll give people advice. He'll give them a little comedy book that gives them advice and things like that. And they can come back if they kill it. Like there's people who've made it famous off of that show. It's really incredible to check out. And it just goes to show how hard it is to be funny sometimes. Because you might think you're funny, and then you go in front of an audience, and you're not funny. You know what I mean?
Well, it's totally fair. And I mean, I get TikTok videos all the time that come through about. By the way, the Puckn Pod is on TikTok.
That is true.
On my For You page, and it's like a random stand-up comedian, because I watch every time a stand-up comedy thing comes on, I watch it. Yeah. Whether I think it's funny or not, I usually watch it till the end.
Totally.
And then you get random stand-up comedians that you've never seen before in your life and may never see again, but that clip you show, you're just peeing yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like so many people can tell jokes, but it's really all the delivery.
That's right.
You can sit there and write jokes for days, right? But it's that pizzazz that you need, and it can be rare.
And I think that's what makes that podcast so interesting, is that you do watch a lot of people bomb, and it's really how they react when they bomb. Like, you'll tell a joke, and when they don't get a laugh, how do they respond to that?
Yeah.
So I've seen people bomb and then do well off the recovery from that. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're playing to bomb so that they can recover from that, and that's where the comedy comes from.
I think you see with some people that kind of like are funny and say a group of friends and stuff like that. Sometimes they're funny because they feed off of something somebody else said. When you're put in the spotlight, sometimes it's kind of hard to think right on your feet, right? Where you're basically, if it doesn't work out, then you're like, I'm stuck.
Yeah, you're literally stuck in a box.
Yeah.
And you're in front of all these people, right? And you're on a podcast with millions of people listening at the same time. So there's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah, you spend 3 weeks writing a joke for that 1 minute set, and that joke doesn't get any laughs. You're like, well, I might as well just,
Yeah, or you'll get a guy come on and he'll be hilarious as all hell, and then he asks him, he's like, oh, how long have you been doing comedy for? And he's like, this is my first time. Some people get lucky.
Yeah,
because they just realize that in the end it doesn't matter what happens. You're still yourself. You still got a family to go home to. Blah 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 blah. So who cares if I bomb? And then those are the people who tend to do the best, because they don't really care about the response as long as they do what they're intending on doing. Right. So yeah, I just feel like that's a good example, that movie specifically, thinking about the kind of perspective of a stand-up comedian, because it is a brutal thing.
We'll talk about stand-up comedians. Apatow is one of Apatow's major influences and kind of mentors for him was the stand-up comedian Gary Shandling. And he actually did a documentary on Gary Shandling as well, of the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling.
He was funny, Gary Shandling.
He was quite funny, and he, God bless his soul, he has passed away. He's been gone for almost 9 years now.
Yeah.
But I never got around to seeing the documentary. But it's nice to have that person that you can look up to that kind of helps build your career, your roles, and what you want to do with your life. And awesome that Gary had that influence on him.
Yeah, the Larry Sanders Show was the show that Gary Shandling did, that Apatow had a part in. And it was literally a year later that he started Freaks and Geeks, which is my first experience with Apatow and his writing and stuff like that. They only did 6 episodes of that show. So it was literally from 99 to 2000.
Oh, wow.
Pretty incredible. But it's memorable. Everybody remembers it because of all the people that were in that show, right? And I think really Apatow did a good job in terms of helping create, writing for these characters or for these actors to make themselves known. So
now, you said that Gary Shandling was kind of a mentor for Judd Apatow. Now, would you say that there's a couple of actors that Judd Apatow kind of repeatedly uses that maybe he's been a mentor for them? Guys like, say, Seth Rogen, it would be a big example. Jonah Hill.
Jason Segel.
And the other one for me is Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would their careers be where they are without kind of those beginnings, right?
That's
like
right.
40-Year-Old Virgin was one of Paul Rudd's first real Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was
He
only
was good
20
in that
years
too.
ago.
He was good in that too. They all were good in that, but yeah, I agree. I would have also said James Franco, except before he got canceled.
You can't forget Canadian Jay Baruchel.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Baruchel, yeah.
You can forget him. He's a Habs fan.
He was in Knocked Up. He was really funny in Knocked Up, actually. I thought he did good there.
I shouldn't have gone in there.
I'll quote this again because I think it's funny, but this scene in Knocked Up where they show up and the guy's like, "Oh, you have pink eye," and the guy goes, "No, I'm just really
Actually, my favorite scene in that movie is when she's giving birth and then Jay Baruchel walks in the room and the baby's crowning and they show it and you're just like, ah! I remember the reaction in the theater when we saw that. It was just like the whole crowd was like, "Oh my god!" So
Yeah,
funny.
that was unexpected.
That's the incredible thing with what Apatow does is that he finds ways to surprise the audience in almost all of his movies. There's always a scene where you're just like, that's the best scene in the whole in all comedy, and it's the Farrelly brothers did a really good job with that too in their movies. I remember watching Something About Mary and just like being blown away with how funny that movie was too. So there's so many different comedians, or there are so many different comedy directors that you have out there, comedy writers that you have out there that really make that impression, that lasting impression on you. And Apatow for me is definitely one of the best, if not the best.
You kind of tend to flock to anything that they do, right? Just like your particular favorite actors. I'll watch anything with Denzel Washington.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's kind of that same way in that style of movie. And then even if you find a movie similar, like for example, say you take a movie like Step Brothers, and I would kind of rope that in with or Superbad as another example, kind of rope that in with the, say, Judd Apatow style movie, and then I realized that he was producer on both of those films, right?
Exactly. Heavily influenced, for sure.
Well, he's been in the entertainment industry for a long time,
Yeah.
like over 30 years. Surprisingly enough, he was involved with a cartoon show that I loved in the mid-90s, and that was The Critic with John Lovitz.
Oh yeah, it stinks. Yeah, I remember that.
It was a hilarious show, and funny enough, Jay Sherman, the character from The Critic, made appearances from time to time in The Simpsons.
Yeah, he wrote for The Simpsons too,
and he wrote for The Simpsons as well.
Yeah.
It's fun being able to know that he's had his hand in so many of these things. Like I said, you've talked about the Larry Sanders Show, Simpsons, Freaks and Geeks. He's got a lot of experience, and certainly everyone's got to know the name at some point, having seen these shows, seen these movies.
if not from our podcast.
Exactly.
Well, gentlemen, I think that's a good point to wrap it up here. What do you guys think? I thought we had a pretty good pretty good pod today.
I got heated up, but I like that. It gives you your honest opinion, right? You're able to kind of really say what's on your mind and not have to kind of tone it down necessarily. And talking about hockey does that for me because it's just such a big passion of mine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a little emotion, I think. I think there's a lot of truth in emotion, and I agree. I think that's really what it comes down to. There's nothing wrong with mixing it up a little bit and getting Brandon a little cheesed off here and there. Paul, how you feeling, man?
Love it. I love talking about hockey. Love talking about movies. Certainly, there's never any shortage of stuff to talk about when we're getting kind of heated up or praising our teams, praising the characters, praising actors, directors. I love it. Can't say enough.
I'm pretty sure next episode will bring some more heat as well, because there's always something to talk about, especially with the way that NHL player safety does what they do. We're always going to be, maybe we'll have to have another What's Bugging Brando.
Maybe we will. Yeah, we probably will. There's lots bugging me, always. Paul, I know that this kind of goes without saying between you and me. We always book it off, but we got to get Joe on the trade deadline train.
Yeah, I definitely am interested. I definitely want to do something. We'll work it out. I'll see if I can manufacture a live show, because I think that would be exciting for us 100%. To do. So, but I just don't want to make any promises because I don't know what we're capable of. But we'll see what we can do, sure.
We'll keep you guys posted.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, guys, I want to thank you for listening to the show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed yourselves. If you did, or if you didn't, maybe let us know in a comment. We're available on all social medias, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, you name it. You can reach out to us at the Puckn Pod, or you can also check us out on anywhere you get a podcast that is available for us. I know there are some places we're not available, but I know for sure we're available on Spotify, and we're available on iHeartRadio as well. So make sure you reach out to us through there as well. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show. My name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
We'll catch you guys later on the next one.